Hi there, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me check my mic, make sure my mic's on. Everything's virtual, so I got to make sure it's all set up. My name is Cassandra Powell, and I am the Executive Director for Light of Loving Kindness. I want to thank you for joining us today and just give you a little bit of information about One Breath Chicago. So during the month of January, we are going to be providing weekly live stream events. This one is Your Breath in COVID, or how breath work can help to support and improve your immune system. Coming up after this, we have Your Breath and Self-Care, Your Breath and Anxiety, Stress, Depression, and Trauma. And we are going to finish up the month with Your Breath and Anger Management. You don't want to miss any of those. So thank you for joining us. Today is our kickoff, and we really appreciate you being here. So after this month, at the end of January, we're going to go into daily breath works. So every day through the month of February at 3 p.m., we are going to share a different One Breath Chicago breath work. Now, this is called One Breath Chicago, but you can join us from anywhere in the world. Following the daily breath works in the month of February, then we're going to open it up to everyone. We'll want you to share with us and send you your videos for One Breath Gary, or One Breath Delhi, or One Breath Cincinnati, or One Breath Los Angeles. So all of that is to come, but thank you so much for joining us today, and stay in touch by signing up for our newsletter. All right, here we go. I would like to introduce you to Muriel Baptiste, and Muriel is the Executive Director of Utopia Connect Foundation, who is also our partner in this event. All right, and here you go, Muriel.
Thank you, Cassandra. It's been a joy to work with you on this project. So my name is Muriel Baptiste, and I'm the Executive Director with Utopia Connect Foundation. And we're so excited to bring you One Breath Chicago. But of course, like Cassandra just said, this is not just about Chicago. I want to hear from Dominica, all the beautiful islands around the world as well. What are you doing during this time? And Cassandra shared a little bit about One Breath Chicago, but it's just a response that we have, and especially during this time when we're all struggling to figure out how to truly breathe. We're failing. I was failing, and that this is a response to just what's happening around us and learning how to use our breath as a coping mechanism. So, One Breath Chicago, we want you to walk away to join us every week, and moving into February, every day, just learning how to breathe. I'm not going to take up too much time because we have a lot going on today. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much, Muriel. And so join us on this journey, and let's learn about how our breath can help us in so many different ways. So now I am going to introduce you to our facilitator for this panel discussion today. And let me read a little bit about David to you. So give me just one moment here. Okay, so our facilitator for today is David Nesbitt Taylor. David is a U.S. Navy veteran and an artist with talents in multiple disciplines, including acting, writing, dancing, and music. He believes that self-healing can be and will be as normalized as the disempowerment of self that is so pervasive in much of society today. Social norms will not deter him from teaching the power we all carry within us. So if you look at our bio, you will see David there. And now I will turn this over to David.
Thank you very much, Cassandra. Yes, as we trek forward, I'm going to introduce you now to our panelists. We're going to start off with Dr. Daniel Domoleczny of Point Zero Wellness. He's a graduate of Pacific College of Oriental Medicine. He's an acupuncturist, an herbalist, a personal trainer, and nutrition coach. He teaches breath work, yoga, Reiki, and shamanism. Dr. Domoleczny is a staunch advocate for his patients' sense of self-awareness and empower them to improve their quality of life. Then we also have Marshanelle Horne. She's a board certified nurse practitioner, a certified yoga instructor, and the CEO of Thrive Life Wellness Center. Her value and passion for patient advocacy, education, and quality healthcare for all fuels her wellness center, integrating her 20 years of experience in Western medicine with the therapeutic yoga, meditation, and Reiki for specific and chronic health conditions. And then John David Sparks, personal growth teacher, speaker, healer, and author of the 2011 book, The Nature of Reiki, A Path of Inclusion. Utilizing breath work in almost all of his healing sessions, he is dedicated to teaching anyone interested some breathing techniques that can bring healing and peace to their lives. Thank you all for joining us today, and all you out there in internet land for being here. Let's start off with, while we're all here, let's start off with the first question of what is the immune system and how does COVID affect the immune system? I'm going to hand that to Marshanelle.
I think that's an awesome question to start out with. Our immune system it's like our first line of defense. When we're born, as babies, we get like a passive immunity from our mothers. When we breastfeed, we get like a passive immunity from mom. When we breastfeed, we can transfer antibodies from mom with breastfeeding. And it's like, mom passed that on to us and it kind of protects us, antigens and antibodies. But basically, our immune system recognizes, attacks, destroys, encapsulates pathogens as they enter our bodies. And it tries to take care of it and destroy pathogens before they do any other harm. I'm trying to kind of simplify it as much as possible, but as pathogens enter our body, our immune system takes care of it and destroys it, viruses and bacteria and microbes, and rids of it before it does any harm to any organs and tissues and things like that. Any further damage to those systems before our body gets harmed in any other kind of way. And then what it does is it recognizes it if those pathogens re-enter our body again. So we build up our own system to if it re-enters, we can recognize it and then we can fight it off again. So that's the beauty of our own system, that we can recognize it and we can fight it off over and over again. So there's a system that we have in place as humans that we don't need any artificial immunity to be able to do this. But then again, we do make artificial immunity, such as vaccines. So there's a simple way of putting it. There's passive immunity, there's immunity that we can create as humans, and then there's artificial immunity in a simpler form, instead of going into antigens, antibodies, passive immunity, humoral immunity, and all of those big words of putting it.
So I have a question for you, Marcia. Given that the body starts making immunity from the moment you're born, do you believe that it's possible that we get enough immunity where a vaccination is not necessarily needed, unless perhaps you're immune compromised already? Do you believe that's possible?
Well, I think to a certain extent, it can be possible. to whereas our body can fight it off. I think sometimes we can shelter ourselves so much that we don't give ourselves the opportunity to build up immunity. And we wouldn't know that unless we, it's almost like a research, like we would have to do research to figure that out. We wouldn't know unless we try. So you wouldn't know it unless you expose yourself to it. So everything has to be research-based, research and evidence-based.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who are pro-vaccination and a lot of people who are not. So I was just curious as to your opinion on that.
Yes. With the herd immunity, you know, there's a lot of research that says that's a big debate right now. That's a whole debate in itself. You know, in order for things to be effective with herd immunity, there has to be 70% of the population that has to be vaccinated in order for herd immunity to be effective. So there's a big research that says, yes, herd immunity can be effective if 70% of the population is vaccinated. But there's people that says that, no, that's not true. You know, you don't have to be vaccinated. So that's a big debate, and there's a big discussion about that right now. So we can have a big discussion just in that alone. So we can have our own topic about that on the side.
So Dr. Domoleczny,
Yes, sir.
How does the immune system, how breath work within the immune system, or how do they relate to each other?
So just kind of add, so Marshanelle did a really nice job of talking about the various aspects of the immune system, right? Just for those who are keeping score, I just want to highlight so that people know, you know, what we're talking about, right? You have the adaptive immunity, which is what you're kind of given genetically from your parents. And then you have the one that you build up as you grow. And so Marshanelle talked about being exposed to things in reference to vaccines, which, you know, John asked about. And it's a really important thing, right? It's about exposure to the environment, but then it's also about the things that we take into our bodies, such as supplements, such as different kinds of food, what we do to ourselves, and how do we keep our immunity sort of in balance, I guess you could say. And part of the issue is that we live in most of us live in kind of suburban communities, you know, and not just city versus suburbs. I'm saying, like, we live in homes and we live in apartments. And so a lot of us don't have a lot of exposure to a couple of things that are really important. Number one is sunlight, right? A really important one. And a lot of research has been shown that low vitamin D levels make the difficulties of COVID-19 much more detrimental. The other thing is that, I know it sounds simple, but it's fresh air, right? So just doing something really simple is going outside. I know that we have our recommendations to stay at home and do our things, and I'm certainly not saying to break any of those. I wouldn't go against public health recommendations. However, there's nothing to be said about there's nothing negative about going for a walk, you know, or I know it's a little cold outside right now here in Chicago. If you're somewhere where it's warm, then definitely you should make use of it, because we certainly miss the sun here for sure and the warmth. But there is something to be said about getting outside and getting some fresh air in addition to the vitamin D. So, you know, as we're talking about all this stuff, understand that everything kind of goes into people's adaptive immunity as they're growing, right? What you take into your body in terms of food, what you bring into your body in terms of exposing yourself to environmental pathogens like dirt, right? Dirt is not the end of the world, right? People just don't, a lot of us, you know, in Chicago especially, you know, we're very fortunate because we have a lot of forest preserve area that we can kind of go and be in. But some people don't have that. If you're living in the middle of the city somewhere and there's like a tree on your street, and that's the only kind of forest or the only kind of plant life that you see, you're not going to have the opportunity to really kind of go outside of concrete. So really trying to venture outside on a regular basis, especially now, even when it's cold, you know, when it's warm, it's much easier, but now it's really important. So I just wanted to say that. And answering your question, breath work in the immune system. So what's interesting is that we're breathing all the time, right? I forgot who told it to me. I'm not going to say that I made it up, but I'll say that I heard it from somewhere. Is that the breath is the first gift we are given in this life and the last to be taken away. And so it's something that we're doing consistently throughout our lives, right? And it's generally an unconscious process. meaning it's done without us thinking much about it, right? Even though we're talking about breath work, I'm only thinking about myself breathing now that I'm talking about it, right? Which is funny. But the breath is something that is sort of kind of like, I don't know, it's like a live feedback as to how we're feeling. So if for those people who are watching and for those who are here even participating, if we just think about times in which we get, you know, sort of, I'm not going to say upset in a negative way, but just kind of riled up a little bit, right? Some uncle or some aunt says something to us on a holiday and we kind of be like, ooh, right? What do? We hold our breath a little bit. We inhale and we kind of fight our words back if we're respectful. And if not, we let it fly. Same thing when we get frustrated when we're inside of a car dealing with traffic or whatever the case is. We change our breath pattern to mimic often the mood that we're feeling. And given the amount of stress that we're all under for various reasons, especially over the last, you know, year or so during this pandemic, that's changed the way in which a lot of us breathe on a regular basis. And because it's a relatively unconscious process, like I mentioned before, this goes without our notice. And it has detrimental effects on our nervous system, on our immune system in particular, because we feel stressed, and that reflects in our breath. So taking the time out to do breath work consciously, right, to pay attention to an unconscious process, helps us to kind of work backwards a little bit to peel back some of the layers, right? Everybody uses the onion reference, but I'll use it here, right? There's layers to it. And so when we start to do some conscious breathing, we can kind of pull back some of the layers of stress that have really been building up, especially since probably most of us from March.
Yeah,
Don't you think it's special that we, out of all the systems of the body, that breathing is the only one that is done unconsciously and consciously? I think there's something very special about that, and we need to pay attention. And I'd also like to just backtrack a little bit. You mentioned vitamin D a couple of times. I read a statistic that showed that over 82% of the people who were admitted for COVID had low vitamin D levels. So that speaks a lot right there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why that's exactly why I mentioned it. It's just there are some things that we can take some control over. So we can't control the outside world. I can't control what my governor tells me I should be doing or not doing. I can't control if the restaurants are open, if I go see my family, if I can do this, that. But what can I control? My breathing, right? And breathing on just a even keel adds a sense of calm, right? Adds a sense of centering, and it doesn't cost any money. It doesn't cost any money, which is the best part, because everything seems to be costing money. I went to the grocery store yesterday, and I swear everything was like 99 cents, exactly more than it was 2 weeks before I went there. So breathing is free, man. You know, breathing is free.
Yeah, free for the moment. But breathing is a thing that is both at the same time happening to us as well as a thing that we're doing, an active thing.
And I would like to add, too, it's, just to add into that, what you said, John, too, it's just vitamin D is very common to be one of the things that's deficient. Like most of my clients that come in to see me, when I add that to our panel for lab work, is vitamin D is always deficient. And I'm learning that that's much needed to be added to the panel. And a lot of our clients don't even know that they're deficient in vitamin D, and they're coming in and they're suffering from mood changes. They're suffering from fatigue and all of these symptoms. And it could be just that their vitamin D level is low.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just associate vitamin D with, my bone health, but vitamin D can affect so many different things.
Right. Well, I'd also like to add, thank you. But I'd like to add that to bring it back to focus on breathing, I think, and you guys can disagree, please do, but I think that the respiratory system, the way in which we breathe, is the primary aspect of our immune system. I mean, even if we have proper vitamin D levels, unless we have the proper oxygenation of those of our cells, it's not going to be very effective. So I think it's super important that we all learn how to breathe. And not only will it help us to have the cells of our body function properly from the nutrition, but it will also, as Dr. Dan has already said, bring us into a place of mindfulness and calm so that we can handle all of this chaos quite a bit better. And that's why I'm so excited to be here, because it's just crazy out there, and you don't have to be crazy. You just don't have to be. You can breathe. It's
And since I have you here, John, so and this will go to everyone afterwards, but in your practice, how are you using breath work to help heal, or to help, advocate for self-awareness, self-improvement?
Yeah, well, I know that when people come to see me for whatever they come to see me for, oftentimes they think that they're going to come in and they're going to get an answer to their problems and they're going to leave and everything's going to be okay, like I have a magic pill. But that's not the way that holistic healing works. So I really like to give everybody something they can take home with them, homework, if you will. And focused breathing is the easiest thing to give to them. I think the hardest thing for anybody is not the focused breathing, but getting in a routine of focused breathing, because unlike the magic pill, even though you can feel the impact immediately, in order to get the greatest benefits, you have to keep it up. You have to find some sort of a daily practice, even if it's 5-10 minutes, where you are conscious of your breath work so that you get in a routine and so that it has a chance to build. And that's probably the bigger problem. But to answer your question directly, David, yeah, I give everybody some sort of a breathing technique, usually something very simple. Sometimes it's just showing them how to deep breathe abdominally, because a lot of people, even people in the profession of personal trainers and our fitness, a lot of times I find that they really don't breathe properly. I say, show me a deep breath, and then they breathe from their chest. That's not a deep breath. We've got to expand that diaphragmatic muscle, and we've got to then bring it up. So there's a lot of reasons behind that, and I don't want to take up everybody's time, but that's basically what I do. Usually a really simple technique, and one in which I hope to be able to have time to share with the audience at the end of this panel discussion, and it's simply called 478, and it just does wonders.
478. Okay. I'm not sure if Dr. Domoleczny or Ms. Horne wanted to chime in specifically on your practice of how you advocate for your patients and their self-awareness and growth and breath work to improve their health and their healing.
Well, I practice obesity medicine as well, and I have in my treatment plan lifestyle and behavioral, sort of like a standard of care, and we talk about portion control. I wish I had my sheet here to kind of share what we go over, but it includes portion control, and it also includes meditation and deep breathing. And all of these things, it's a list of things that they have to do every 30 days. And that's included in the list of things that's recommended that they do. And it's a stepwise approach. And they start, for people who are not comfortable with meditation and breathing, I start with, asking them if they can at least dedicate 5 minutes. And then I ask them if they can kick it up into, to 10 minutes and 15 minutes, just to kind of get them in the habit or, the routine of starting this practice, because I do think it's necessary that they, start to do this, because it's, if it gets to be routine for them, it gets to be something that's natural, it can change their life. So I agree with that.
Yeah, for myself, I've been doing, well, up until the lockdown, but I was doing group breathwork workshops, for the last probably 2 years, things that I've learned from people kind of all around the world. And obviously I don't do them in, maybe on one-on-one I do now, but there's really something special doing them in a group, but that's for a different discussion. But I mean, the breathwork is amazing, for those who have, never done it before or have done, bits of it here or there. it's transcendental, it's psychedelic, it's an immediate, it's Prozac, it's Adderall. I mean, whatever, pick your favorite drug, whether it's, you know, legal or not. Breathwork can take you there. And it's not just, I'm not an advocate because I'm not saying it because I was chosen to be on this panel. I'm saying it because I believe in it. And that's why I was chosen to be here today, as is everybody else. It's magic. It's magic, you know, and like I kind of mentioned, and then John mentioned earlier, it's one of the very few processes that's both conscious and unconscious, meaning I can control it, but more oftentimes it probably is doing it on its own without me paying attention. And the ways in which that it affects the way that we think, the way that we feel, emotionality, our ability to digest, our ability to deal with chronic issues, you know, it is amazing. People who breathe shallow tend to have more chronic issues. That's just, they heal more slowly. And healing is not just from like cuts, but it's from our food, it's from our environment, it's from emotional, you know, discrepancies. It's dealing with the environment, being supple. And so your ability to work with something that is inherent to who you are, it's like learning more about the car that you purchased, right? Learning that it has another feature to it. Yeah, it drives, which is great, but you know, it also cooks eggs on the hood when it's hot outside. Like you can use it for multiple things. So what I'm saying is that everybody has this innate thing that really allows us to be alive. We've adapted. I mean, who knows how about evolution in that sense, knows why we breathe the way that we do, but we do it. And it's an untapped potential that every single human being who is alive and watching this or not watching this has. And it's something that really should be taken advantage of, you know? And I would love it if there would be more people. I mean, we're doing it now, but if there'd be more public health people who would really be an advocate for people to do some breathing, even if it's just 90 seconds a day, you know, I don't know if that'll keep the doctor away, but it's better than zero.
Okay. And I mean, it definitely would, this recording of this being passed along would definitely benefit people beyond this discussion at this moment. But with that being said, are there any people that, you know, everyone has to breathe, you're putting on a machine to help you do it, but is there anyone that should not be doing deep diaphragmatic breathing, or like, or anyone that it gets away from, you know, that it's like, oh yeah, maybe it wouldn't be the best for you to be doing it, or, you know, limitations to it? And now I'll start with you, Dr. Domoleczny, since you're here.
So if we're talking about conscious breath work, no, everybody can and should. All right. So, but if you're talking about specifically diaphragmatic breathing, and for those who, you know, very briefly, diaphragmatic breathing is the inflation of like your entire thorax, your entire abdomen, in addition to your lungs. So John mentioned earlier, tell someone to take a deep breath, and they go, okay, hold on. And they lift their chest up and they breathe up into their right. And so this is not what we're talking. We're talking about diaphragmatic breathing, like when you watch a young child or a cat, a kitten, or a puppy breathe. They breathe into their belly, and then that inflates the rest of their chest. So that's what David's asking about. So who should have caution when doing diaphragmatic breathing? Well, people who have, you know, consistently, right? People who have really high or really low blood pressure should probably be cautious about doing this, because it does influence blood pressure. So if someone has either one of those, be careful, probably do a little bit less intense and do it probably seated down or lying even, so that you don't get lightheaded and fall over and hit your head. That wouldn't help your breath practice. People who have heart or lung conditions, obviously, if there's some things that are going on inside that you know, are chronic in terms of high blood pressure. I mentioned that earlier, but chronic heart conditions, or, you know, asthma, something like that. You don't want to induce a short and kind of an acute attack of something or spasm something. So just to be cautious with those people. And then injuries, right? People who have injuries in and around the rib cage, that would be, you know, broken ribs or strained muscles on the intercostal. You want to be cautious of that. And the last one, and I'm sure there are others that maybe John and Marshanelle might know about, but the last one, if people have, let's say, some kind of like mental fitness type things, right? So anxiety or some other things that might be going on in the background that are really, really kind of potent, right? Doing diaphragmatic breathing is absolutely a great way to work through these things, for sure. However, when doing diaphragmatic breathing for any length of time, a significant length of time. If you've never done it before and you have something in the background, again, like anxiety or some family history of bipolar or schizophrenia, something like this, you definitely want to do it with a trained professional. It can stoke the fire a little bit. And so it's just to be cautious. I'm not scaring anybody away from doing anything. It's just, you want to proceed like anything, with, as Marshanelle mentioned earlier, with some research and some good ideas behind you, so that you just kind of approach it consciously and compassionately, right?
Yeah. So like if you were to go to the gym, you wouldn't start out trying to lift 500 pounds. You would start out with wherever you're at. And I think that's what you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly. Just move forward with some caution. And the more you keep it up, the greater your capacity will be, and so will be the capacity for your healing as well. I've worked with people who have, in a very short time, stopped having to go to panic clinics just because of deep breathing exercises. And it is so rewarding to see that. It's like, oh, I can do this? Yeah, I've got it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, most definitely. And Marshanelle, I'm not sure if you had anything to
Well, the only thing I would like, of course, if you're a pregnant woman approaching your last trimester, you would to be careful with that intra-abdominal pressure. So.
Most definitely. Yeah.
Oh, may I say just one more thing?
Yes, for sure.
When Dr. Dan was talking about how people deep breathe, I noticed, Dr. Dan, that you inhaled through your mouth to demonstrate. And I think that's what a lot of people do as well. They breathe through their mouth when they deep breathe. And there's a lot of science showing that breathing through the nose is really the proper way to do this. The exchange of oxygen to carbon dioxide shifts. Nitric oxide is initiated through nose breathing, and there's all kinds of deformities, malformities that can take place over time through mouth breathing that I think most people are unaware of. So even you could mouth breathe for short periods of time, but you'd have to do it very consciously, knowing exactly what you're doing. Other than that, I think we should all just be nose breathing.
Yeah. And it's kind of like when if you're ever sick or congested at any point in time, and then like at the end of the sickness, once you get like that last bit of mucus out, dried up or whatever, and you take that first inhale, and what you do your nose, and you just feel that's like, it's like the earth loving you, or like you feel that embrace of like, I can breathe. Yeah. So the importance of breath in that aspect is definitely something I feel like people will need to know.
And our bodies are designed, so intricate that, it's designed to help us, because we have, all those little cilia in our nose and going down, and it helps grab little things that helps with our immunity, bringing it back to that topic of fighting the pathogens. So it grabs, little microbes and pathogens to fight off things. So it's a protective mechanism.
Yeah, that's great.
As well. So my mom used to always say, close your mouth. It can protect you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Those are great. I mean, I think there's a lot of things people could take away from today, but breathe through your nose. I mean, you want to tweet something out, right? That you can just, that's it. Like that out of all the things, for sure. Okay. Breathe through your nose.
Well, actually, since you, I'll start with you, Dr. Domoleczny. What we do is we're going to give you all maybe 60 seconds each to do a takeaway. Then we're going to end with you, John, and then we're going to do your breath exercise. Take a few minutes to do the meditation. That's okay. So, Dr. Domoleczny, is there 60? Well, we'll put you on, we'll say 60 seconds-ish. A takeaway for the people to like, okay, well, this is a thing that like, if I'm going to tell you anything, this is it.
All right. So there, I know there. So there, for those who are watching this, there's a list of questions that we went over before that we wanted to get to, and there was one here that I wanted to make sure that we touched on. So I'll leave the takeaways to Marshanelle and to John, if that's okay. And the one question that I wanted to talk about that was brought up the panel was, how does fear affect the immune system?
Thank you.
So we're talking about immunity, and especially now we're gonna, I did want to talk about this and fear, and we'll open it up a little bit more in fear. We'll just say emotionality in general, right? Because fear is one aspect, right? But there's other emotions that people might be experiencing now in terms of just all the various, I don't know, psychological and financial and all the other kinds of things that we're experiencing. So let me just go through this. So how does fear and / emotionality affect the nervous system? Well, the answer in the short term is negative, right? But this is by design. During times of fear or heightened awareness, we'll even say, we're not prioritizing immunity at all. We are focused on the situation that is providing us the stimulus, right? And this is done, again, intentionally. So for example, if we're, sort of some hunter-gatherer or outdoor dwelling people, if I was to hear something in the distance, or even if we're walking towards our car and we hear some rustling down the block, like, we know, what's that? And what happens? Our heart rate picks up. We start to breathe a little bit more shallow. We feel things. We get ready, right? We get ready to run. Or maybe if, some of us who are military folk or just kind of ruckus in general, we're like, oh, no, hell no, we're about to do this, right? This is good in the short term because it helps us to survive this situation. However, this doesn't do well in the long term, right? Because we're not focused on something that kind of comes and goes. And so this helps us to focus on what's going on right now, and we'll deal with the consequences later. So if I get injured in a fight, but I survive, or if I get injured because some bear is biting me and I can survive, then that's good. I can live my life and continue to be living. However, in the modern society that we all exist in, this is the fear and these situations don't just happen once and then we're good for a couple days or a week. It happens every day. Anytime someone picks up their phone, there could be a potential negative text message from some bank or some family member or some news or something even worse, right? And then when you turn on the news, what do you see? Only negativity, only negativity, only negativity, right? And then you call somebody up on the phone and you can't talk, you can't see them in person, and you can't, deal with them. And this person is in the hospital and this person passed away and money is tight. And so now it's not just some, weirdo down the street or some tiger in the forest that's going to come get me. It's all of these things, because we're not evolved in such a way to really tell the difference at this point between the bear with a pistol and some bad news that I see on whatever media that you like. And so that response to the fear that I mentioned earlier, the shallow breathing, right, the preparation for some conflict, is happening constantly, meaning my body is not preparing for regeneration, is not preparing for relief of these stresses. They just layer upon layer upon layer of circumstances that make us not focus on living the long-term healthy life that we're actually all capable of dealing with. We're inundating ourselves with fear and emotions such that we only deal with things in the short term. And as people who have diabetes or some kind of cancer or blood pressure issues or whatever, we have to pay attention to all the things that we're thinking about, because it does affect the way in which we survive in terms of viruses, not just the one that's going on now, but flus and things like that, and how we heal from the foods that we take in, from the environment that we live in, and then the ability to kind of put foods on our table, feed our families, and see them. So taking some time to do some breath work, and hopefully Marshanelle will give us some good stuff, and I know John's going to give us a nice technique at the end, really does help to kind of start to counteract, to reel back in a little bit from all the things that we go through on a daily basis.
So it sounds like just as much as fear and the anxiety would help us out when we're in danger, relaxing and breathing would also help us out when we're not in danger. Being able to reset ourselves.
We won't talk about the various branches of the nervous system. And I mean, Marshanelle would have a lot of words on that one. And maybe a topic for next time. but because they work together. But yes, I mean, if we just think about balance, I spend how much of my day frustrated or freaked out about this stuff. Well, then what's the balance to that? It's not sleep, right? Because not everybody sleeps well. And it's not food, because I'm always eating, even when I'm pissed off or not, right? So we have to kind of find something that gives us at least a sense of relief for a minute, maybe for 10 seconds, something. And what can I do that is with me all the time? It's not a phone, it's not a pencil or a pen, and maybe it could be or some paint, right? It's not music, it's my breath. And I can breathe while I'm doing all the things that I enjoy doing, right? Whatever that might be, listening to music, going for a walk. I could do it when I'm sitting on a bus. I could do it when I'm driving in a car. I could, I feel like Dr. Seuss, but you could do it anytime. So
that might be a new children's book right there.
Yeah, let's do
Teaching
it.
them early
Yeah.
how to breathe like the cat in the hat. Marshanelle?
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Dan. And I agree. Fear just overwhelms us, and it causes the body to react in a certain way. And everything is so interconnected. The body is interconnected. I wanted to touch on the question that we had that talked about how COVID affects the immune system and how we identify with that. COVID causes the body to go into this cascade effect, this hyper inflammatory effect. So when we think about that, we think about if the body is going into this hyper inflammatory effect, fear causes hyperinflammation. The body shoots out this cortisol, and the cortisol causes the body to be inflamed. And when you listen to the news and you listen to how they say, well, people suffer from COVID that already has, diabetes, if they already have asthma, if they already has all these chronic illnesses, they get affected even more. If they have a deficiency in vitamin D, they're affected even more. But all of these things are diseases that causes inflammation. So if we can do all that we can to decrease inflammation to begin with, how awesome is that we can try and alleviate the inflammation before COVID even happens. Now, I'm not going to tell you that if you do these things, you're not going to catch COVID. I'm not going to make that assumption or try and sell you this this preventative method to say, I don't want you to walk away and say, oh, well, Marshanelle said that if I do these things, you're not going to catch COVID. Don't go away and say that I gave you the cure for COVID. But I will say that if you try and decrease inflammation, then, you may decrease your symptoms a little bit more to where you can try and fight off COVID a little bit better. So things that you can do: decrease inflammation, decrease the sugar in your diet, try and do the diaphragmatic breathing, like, John is telling you. He's going to teach you about that. He's going to try and teach you about decreasing the inflammation. Dr. Dan was teaching you about, decreasing the fear, so you can decrease the inflammation that way. Try and eat the foods that will decrease inflammation. Look up the food list of alkaline diet or alkaline foods that decreases the inflammation, decreasing the cortisol level in your diet. A lot of people come to me and they say, oh, well, how about I went to 7-Eleven and I got some alkaline water. Well, if you look at it and you say, well, I'm drinking this alkaline water, but you're not following foods that are the pH level is still high, it's like pouring a bottle of alkaline water in a whole river or a whole ocean of mud. It's not going to change anything. So think about following healthy practice or healthier practices so everything changes. So following anti-inflammatory, what does inflammation look like? What does your body look like if the immune system is off? You're going to be a little bit achier. You're going to be a little more fatigued, a little tired. You're going to be moving a little bit different. Some people come to me and they're like John was saying before, you think it's going to be a magic pill. It's not a magic pill. Just breathing a little bit differently, eating a little bit differently, drinking more water, taking the sugar out of your diet, making those small changes. That's going to make your life a whole lot different. So just those small changes, lifestyle and behavioral changes, can make you a whole lot better. And that's what I have to say about how COVID is going to look, how the inflammation is going to change, and how your body can just move a little bit differently and bring in yoga, moving. Movement can change you. Breathing can change you. So that's all I have to say about that.
Breathing seems like both a simple thing and a challenging thing to do, because if you're not doing it regular, it may seem hard to like, oh, take the time out. But really, in the amount of time of a commercial of a TV show, you can get a good breath work in, being mindful and breathing. And speaking of breath work, we're gonna go and John, you're gonna.
John, before you start, I just want to say one thing. A client of mine told me speaking of time, right? And people say they don't have time. My client told me, and I just never forgot it. She said, "Don't tell me you don't have time. Tell me it's not a priority. At least we're being honest."
Mm.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, before I begin explaining this breath technique, I would just like to say thank you to everybody, particularly to the wise words of Marsha and Dr. Dan. Those go a long way, and there's just so much more to explore. So it's been a pleasure to be on this panel with you. So thank you very much for all of that. You asked earlier, David, about a takeaway, and there's one phrase that I think is a great takeaway. I didn't make it up, unfortunately, but in fact, the person who originally said it is unknown, but it goes like this: if you own your breath, nobody can steal your peace. That's it. If you own your breath, nobody can steal your peace. You may get COVID, but if you own your breath, nobody can steal your peace. So with that, I'd like to just give a quick introduction to this technique. It was made extremely popular by Dr. Andrew Weil, and it's simply called 478. And in order to do it properly, you have to keep in mind a couple of things. One, that you want to use your diaphragm while you're breathing. You're going to breathe through your nose. The diaphragm is going to expand when you first inhale. So if you're not used to doing that, you might want to just place your hand on your belly and take a deep breath in, and notice if your tummy pushes out when you do. If it doesn't, then you're not using the diaphragm. So let's just take a deep breath in first of all. And if you can feel your stomach pushing out, then you're breathing diaphragmatic breathing. And then just exhale. This time you can exhale through your mouth or nose, it doesn't matter. In this particular technique, you're going to breathe into the count of 4 through your nose. You're going to hold for the count of 7, and you're going to breathe out to the count of 8, thus 4, 7, 8. The only little caveat is that you're going to have your tongue on the roof of your mouth right behind your front teeth. So when you breathe out, you're going to have to breathe out around your tongue. It's going to look like this. I'll just give you an example. So I'm going to, yeah, you can see my fingers here. So I'm going to keep my fingers going as a count so you can see where I'm at. And it's just start like this. Is that clear to everyone?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. And then we're going to do that 4 times. And then that's all it. You'll be amazed at the difference it makes. If that pace was too slow for you, feel free to speed it up for yourself. But if I'm just going to go ahead with that pace, and then you can use your own pace. As long as as long as all 3 of the timings, the 4, the 7, the 8, are equidistant and measured against one another, then you should be fine. So in other words, you don't want to breathe into the count of 4 slow and then hold for the count of 7 while you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, you want it all to be the same rhythm. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then out for 8. So I'm not real sure how to do this on video. I can try and keep everybody's rhythm together by counting, or I can just hold up my fingers. What do you think would be best, Marsha or Dr. Dan?
Count.
Count?
Counting. Yeah.
Right. Counting it is. So everybody just Take a deep breath in and exhale. Just let your muscles relax. And now inhale to the count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out for 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Into 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold to 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out to 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Into 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold to 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out to 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And one more time. 2, 3, 4. Hold to 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out to 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And there you have it. Now, if you want some pointers on that, I know it's kind of awkward if you're not used to breathing out of your mouth, especially around your tongue. You can go on to Dr. Andrew Weil's website, and he's got numerous videos of that. So you can pick that up real quick and practice it. It's really worth it. In 60 seconds or so, you can really change not only your physiology, but your whole mindset, and feel a lot calmer and get along with your day a lot healthier. Any questions about that? Any comments?
Thank you
Greatly
so much for
appreciate it.
that.
And I greatly appreciate all of you, and all of you actually have works available to wellness centers and things to share with everyone on your bios to help improve people with this and continue their journey on self-awareness and self-healing, because the ability to heal is within us. Thank you all for being here for this panel. Thank you all for joining us to watch. I believe Cassandra has, there we go.
You're still muted.
Okay, I'll say thank you again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, David, for facilitating, Muriel, the panelists. Thank you for all of our volunteers. I will say the 4-7-8 breath is one of my favorites. And like John said, the count depends on what works for you. And I just like to add, John, if you don't mind, when you finish that breath, just sit for a moment.
Yes.
And just feel how it feels on the inside of you. Let that breath resonate inside of you. And all of these panelists, their information is available on our bio. And you could also look up the 4-7-8 breath as well and practice it until next week, Sunday at 3 p.m., when we will be hosting another live stream called Your Breath and Anxiety, Stress, Depression, and Trauma. So we're going to be actually looking at some specific practices that you can do to help you with these things. The week after that, Your Breath is Self-Care, and then our panels on anger management. Thank you so much for joining us. Go to onebreathchicago.org to learn more about our One Breath Chicago campaign. And if you can donate to this campaign, please do so. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we operate on donations. Thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye.